maybe we should begin with some introductory terms, however. The most basic one here I can think of is monasticism. Could you define or describe to us what is monasticism?
Sure. Well, there's two ways I think that we should think of that, and the one is is based on the argument of the book. So I'll go with the more traditional one. When someone says monk or monasticism, we probably get an image of a man or a woman wearing a black habit or something like that, like a Benedictine. It's a very traditional image of a monk, a Benedictine. So monasticism is the term historically to reference the institution of monasticism. There's monasteries, and those monasteries have monks and nuns in them. And so when we want to talk about that collectively, we say monasticism comes from the Greek word monos, which means something like alone, or again, in the argument of my book, single-minded. So I think for me, monasticism, it is that. It is the institution that we can experience, go and visit monks who have given their lives over to this and their habits and things like that. But I also think monasticism is a way of orienting ourselves as Christians towards a single-minded pursuit of God, which is the main thesis of the book, which I'm sure we'll get into further.
Yes, yes. Now, there are different types of monastic orders. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. Sometimes we think, well, monks are by themselves, or maybe they live in community. Describe for us some of the different orders that exist.
Sure. So all of the orders kind of have historical places of beginning. So if you read the earliest Christian tradition and you read about monks, they don't belong to orders per se, and that's continued in the Eastern Church, what we think of as the Orthodox Church. They also don't technically have orders. It's a very Western phenomenon. So 6th century, Benedict of Nursia writes a rule, now known as the Benedictine rule, the rule of Benedict. And in time, over several hundred years, people adopt that rule, and then collectively they start being known as the Benedictines. But then in the year 1098, some Benedictines decide, we're not being very good Benedictines. We're not following the rule very well. So let's go off and reform the Benedictine order. And they go to a place called Citeaux, and so they're now known as Cistercians. So they adopt their habit a little bit, the outward clothing they wear. And then you have Benedictines, now you have Cistercians. Bruno of Cologne at one point decides, well, I've kind of had enough of living in Cologne and working at this busy cathedral. I'm going to go live in the woods of France. And he goes and founds a community that they start calling it the Charter House. And so in time, they come to be known the Carthusians. And so then you get to Carthusians, then you hit the 13th century, and a man named Francis and a man named Dominic decide, hey, people shouldn't live in monasteries. We should be available to preach and teach. And so you get Franciscans and Dominicans. And so really what happens is every order is a response usually to a historical moment. And they sometimes take the name of their founder, Franciscans, Dominicans, although the Dominicans are technically the order of preachers and things like that. But that's how we get the orders, is just in time, over the course of history, people maybe emphasize different elements of the rule, and that gives birth to a new order.